Hey guys, my name's Chris. I'm an American Marxist-Leninist from the Midwest, and this is the first video in a series of videos I'll be publishing on my YouTube channel. And this one is regarding communism as a working class movement. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. If you don't, leave a dislike and your comments below as to what you disagreed with or what you thought. Before we can get into communism as a working class movement, we have to distinguish what is capital, what is a capitalist, and who and what constitutes the working class. To start off with capital, capital is, per Karl Marx, surplus labor value. Surplus labor value is that which is extracted from the production of a commodity or service and given to the owning class, the ruling class, the ownership class, or to us, the capitalist class. In the production of any good or service, there is labor costs, raw resources, and maintenance for the equipment and tools used to produce the end product. In a factory producing a good on an assembly line with 5 fellow workers, and say theoretically you are each making $10 an hour, in the process of this production, you have to account for the raw product, which say a hunk of iron, linen, etc., etc. And these things generally cost pennies to the dollar of what the end product's price would cost to the consumer. And then within that realm as well, we have the labor costs, as the bourgeoisie put it, which is ultimately it's our wages or our salaries in whatever fashion you're paid. If you see me glancing down or hear some noise interference, I do have a sheet of notes here that I took, so just to forewarn you guys about that. As far as surplus labor value goes, having 5 fellow workers and say you each make $10 an hour, that'd be $50 for every hour the 5 of you work. But in a factory or an assembly line, for instance, say you produce 10 finished products every hour. If you finish 10 finished products every hour, and with the raw resource costs, you would negate the raw resource cost from the total pricing of the business venture, right? So if you're manufacturing a product in a factory, you would account for the maintenance, you would account for the raw resource, and then you'd have to account for the labor costs. The labor costs are your wages. Everything else, all that money that is not constituted in those 3 things I just mentioned, is the capital that goes generally right back to the person who owns the business or facility, etc., shareholders, what have you. In the process of production, if the 5 of you make $10 an hour, equating to $50 an hour, and the resources and materials to make 10 products in that hour, and the maintenance is, say, another $50, right? But each product itself, after the process is completed, the process of production is completed, you would have, say, a $100 product by the end, right? This means that every hour you'd be generating $1,000 in products, and if you take away the labor and resource and maintenance cost, you would be left with $900 extra in that hour. Those $900 extra, and this could be on the high end of this explanation or the low end, who knows. Every business field is different in how much surplus labor value they extract, but that other 900 that is not the workers' wages, that is not the maintenance cost, or that is not money for the raw resource, that is the capital that ultimately goes back to the shareholders or ownership class, which is the capitalist. The capitalist is someone who works to provide, is someone who directly or indirectly extracts that labor value from a workforce. And this is something that can often be contentious when we have things like money. You know, often capital is attributed to money, and a capitalist is attributed to somebody who has money. And this is not always true. Someone who is self-employed, who does not employ any other workers, while they might be a business owner, does not mean that they are a capitalist. Being a capitalist is someone, as I mentioned, who exclusively extracts that surplus labor value, who extracts that 900 in that example I gave. And the workforce of that is who would generally constitute the working class. Capitalists can come in various forms. They can come in shareholders, business owners. There's, I'm sure, more examples I could give. I don't have very many right now. And these people ultimately exploit those people who are working by taking that $900 in the products they produce and keeping it for themselves. And they're generally a minority of the people in a given company. There's generally, in almost every context I can even imagine, there are always more workers in the field of production than there are capitalists reaping the benefits. And this is because if it were any other way, there would not be enough capital to make the venture worthwhile for the capitalist. And this is not to say that there is no such thing as people who are capitalist minded, people who want to exploit, people who want to be a part of that ownership class. There's absolutely, but what constitutes a working class is someone who works to provide labor value in the form of a commodity or service. Those people on the assembly line, each step of the process of making the end product is ultimately adding labor value to that product, which turns it into something that's invaluable or less valuable to something that is valuable to a consumer. And the working class constitutes of a wide variety of people. The working class, contrary to a lot of knowledge, is not people who do things, people who mow their lawn and go and help people out, or et cetera, et cetera. The working class is an economic caste, similar to what the nobility was under feudalism. Because the working class is exclusively an economic caste, the working class is not limited by any racial, ethnic, religious, or gender identity, or otherwise. Because of that, we get into a lot of theoretical arguments over who generally constitutes working class. There are cases in which case workers make more than some capitalists. If there was a small store and it was owned by someone but ran by 2 employees, and that capitalist owner received, say, the capital extracted from those workers, and it was only say $100,000, he could theoretically make less than a worker who is employed and his labor value is extracted by a company. If we put it compared to, say, a oil rig worker. Oil rig workers are among some of the highest paid workers in contemporary society, or even some blue-collar workers in management or whatnot. And this is not to deny the concept of what we as communists know as the labor aristocracy, but to more finely attune to who that is. The labor aristocracy is people who constitute a section of the working class that help in the exploitation process of their comrades in the working class. And that can come in a lot of forms. It can come in white-collar work, it can come in blue-collar work, it can come in strike-busting, things like that. Generally speaking, the labor aristocracy is composed of people who are aligned or affiliated with the capitalist class. Now to get into the content, the primary content of the video, which is communism as a working class movement. The left is distinct from communism as a working class movement insofar as the left is often considered the whole of all progressive forces of all classes. Because while a capitalist is someone who exploits, there are progressive elements of that class and reactionary elements of that class, and this applies equally to workers. In the progressive camp of the capitalist class, we have people like AOC, or people who might be a part of the establishment and make money off of investments made with their wages received from the taxpayer. Or there are also capitalist businesses that put money towards things like the LGBTQIA and Black liberation. And while these are progressive elements, they are still not a part of the working class, and they are distinct from communists in their exploitation of the working class. In many cases, the left is shrunk into a social bloc that constitutes exclusively those with the correct ideas. In reality, the left leaves little room for growing in the working class masses, because the working class masses do not always hold the aforementioned correct ideas. This ultimately pits the working class against itself and falls into what Gus Hall dubbed petty bourgeois radicalism. The working class is not enhanced through this petty bourgeois radicalism, but divided, and often the victims of this exclusivity is the mass of uneducated or undereducated blue-collar workers who are ignorant of communism and have been stripped of their education and their ability to be educated. And this is firstly by the capitalists, who teach us these falsities like communism is big government, communism is a dictatorship, etc., etc. And secondly, by the broader left wing, who denies them access to this knowledge, or denies them the ability to converse on these things and to learn. Sorry, I got lost in the sauce here. Still, it is these workers who are oppressed generally greater than their educated counterparts in their low wages, in the information war, which the uneducated elements or undereducated elements of the working class, and generally consist within the realm of blue-collar workers, often lose to. And also in the constant persecution by the capitalist state via profiling and in the courts. The working class, the blue-collar working class, is often the first people to turn to crime to make ends meet, or to be predisposed to most all of the negative elements of the capitalist system, like being denied health care, or not having the funds or education to better themselves in general. Sorry about that. And demographically, the education and extended education that many people do have via college, finishing, completing high school, this paves the way for a better understanding of communism and socialism, because you have a lot of context to add to it that many people who are uneducated or undereducated do not have. Um, and having a deeper understanding of social issues as these are brought up in college and in uh, general schooling. Uh, and overall, they just having an education generally provides a higher standard of living. Um, you generally can find jobs with better pay. Um, you are among a more professional class of workers that are more required to have a certain level of understanding of the processes that their labor field is dealing with, and that promotes higher wages for those people and a better standard of living overall, as I mentioned. And that's not to say that this is a fault of the people who have an education or who grew to understand this stuff as it is. It's more to say that, people on the left wing constitute this educated masses. Today in America, in my experience, a lot of the communists I meet are college educated. They are white collar professional workers who have the ability to grasp these concepts far better than your local McDonald's worker, your local factory worker. These people, not to say that they're always uneducated, but a vast majority of them, where this is their full time job, they are. And they didn't have access to the same knowledge to be able to understand the stuff as those who went to college or completed high school or otherwise did. And generally, lack of education is fundamentally tied to a lack of income. It's tied to poverty. And this is why we got to kind of discuss where the distinction between the left and communism as a working class movement is. Having an education is a luxury and a privilege that many in poverty simply don't have the time, money, or resources to provide themselves. And when people on the left wing limit the engagement of these conversations to people who are also on the left wing or people who are also progressive, they kind of unintentionally exclude a vast majority of the working class people, which is these uneducated blue collar workers, service workers, factory workers, what have you. And as people who are educated on this stuff, we got to take the time to educate these people, to talk to them, to gauge their opinions, and to, most of all, to meet them where they're at. Nothing really good comes from immediately distinguishing someone as your enemy who does not agree with every single point of socialism. And that's not to say that the majority of socialists do that even, but it's more to say that, we have to be willing to have conversations, even the most unpleasant ones. And a tough topic for a lot of people is racism. A lot of people, myself included, even for a long time, you have things that you don't realize are racist. And a lot of people on the left will just simply shut out people who they deem as racist for maybe something that would be a racial microaggression, something that they don't necessarily realize is a slight. And a lot of people on the left who are college educated pin that on these people who aren't educated as, oh, well, you need to educate yourself. And this, to me, is a huge flaw in the development of communism, socialism here in the United States. To get the widest pool of people to accept socialism, we have to be willing to meet people where they're at, to talk to people about these things, to have these hard conversations. And I don't expect people in these oppressed, marginalized groups to, be willing to go out and discuss with, people who they view as slighting them, the context of why they're slighting them. This is the duty of white comrades to educate their fellow white working class on these things. And that goes for all spheres of marginalized people. That goes for misogyny. That goes for transphobia, in general, xenophobia. We have to take the time and effort to discuss these problems with people, because they did not always have the same abilities as the people who should be discussing this with them did. And when we deny this stuff with them, instead of these people educating themselves, generally they react to it. It takes extensive discussion to change people's mind, and that's not to say every single person can just turn over to socialism or turn over to communism, because it's simply not true. But it is to say that they certainly will not do that if we are approaching them in an antagonistic manner. And this is something that can be worked on by people in the communist sphere when we understand communism as a working class movement and stop thinking about this as a left versus right debate. The working class is a class, and communism is a movement of that working class. And in order to consolidate these two forces, we have to start with conversation. We have to start with engagement. A lot of people in my family, and even myself, are extremely conservative, and some of them I think are worth talking to about it, and others I do not. And that's something that is obviously at the discretion of the people who are doing this discussing to make. Like, this is a decision that the people who are going out and having these conversations have to analyze and interpret. Is this person actually racist? Is this person actually a misogynist? Or do they not understand? Do they not have the nuances that I do to comprehend this in the way that I comprehend this? That's a big conversation we gotta start having. And I bring this up not as some moralizing superhero savior of the poor blue-collar workers. I speak of this as a member of this community, as a member of the uneducated. As a communist, my journey was very long. I went from being extremely conservative to where I'm at now. And that was a journey that I made myself through various and rigorous forms of self-criticism and ideological criticism. And within that, I have managed to come out what I would like to think as a better person. But this is something that not everybody has the capability to do themselves. We cannot leave people to just come to our side on their own or out of just their own volition. There has to be room for conversation to be had, and we have to take people in good faith. And that's the biggest distinction between people who are on the left wing, the so-called left wing, a lot of groups who will immediately cry out that every working class person who even say supports Trump or holds some reactionary views is immediately the enemy of communism. And that's not always true. A lot of these people are a handful of conversations away from understanding our position. They just need to be able to have that experience, be able to have that conversation. And denying that to them ultimately just hinders the working class movement. Working class is supposed to be a fellowship. It's supposed to be a unity of the working class, not of the left wing. The left wing is an arbitrary concept. It is a social bloc, as I mentioned earlier. And that social bloc is not as even progressive as they often propose. Is it progressive for capitalists of specific demographics to donate to this or that progressive thing. Sure, in the context of the donation, it might be progressive, but in the context of the exploitation of the worker, they are still exploiting the working class objectively. It doesn't matter if that working class person holds reactionary views or not. That person is still objectively exploited, and many, like I said earlier, many of these people, especially in blue collar fields of work, don't hold the education to comprehend this stuff in the same way many of us do. And I even exclude myself from that. I have no real formal education. I did not graduate high school. I did not go to college. Um, like I said, this is a long journey of rigorous self-criticism and ideological debate, and it's sad to see how quickly people are willing to shove off their fellow members of the working class simply because they don't hold the exact same views as them. And it's also very, in my opinion, just blatantly stupid because people in the working class are not all the same level of development, and they have different lived experiences which lead them to different conclusions. And it's also not appropriate to just deny them the right to be able to have these discussions because, as I said, it just hinders ultimately our movement overall. I'm going to start to ramble, so I'm going to cut this video short right now. Thank you for any of you who actually watch this whole video. I'll make an effort to make the content and quality of this better next time. This is kind of my first time doing it, my rough draft. If it gets support, if people watch it, I appreciate you guys, and thank you for being willing to hear me out. And I hope that you guys continue to watch these videos, and hopefully I can help build up socialism and communism in the United States through this kind of content. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye.